So, potentially a nice, easy one for us this morning then with Tom. It's Konnect Radio, by the way. And this morning, we're going to put this to Tom. You may have heard this used before in argument against Christianity and other religions. Well, in the history of mankind, there's been thousands of different gods. So why is the Christian God different and the one that we should be worshipping and following?
Thank you, Gareth. Why is the Christian God different? And out of all the thousands of different gods, how can somebody claim really today in our modern world to know that the Christian God is the right God? What we believe is partly a product of our experiences and the dominant stories and underlying beliefs and narratives of the culture that we emerge from. There is an old parable about 6 visually impaired Hindus touching an elephant that illustrates this point of view. One man touches the side of the elephant and says it's a wall. The other touches the ear and says it's the leaf of a tree. Another holds a leg and says it's a tree trunk. Another takes hold of the elephant's trunk and says it's a snake. Somebody else is touching the tusk of the elephant and is unable to see, but believes it's a spear. Another touches the elephant's tail, is holding onto the tail and is calling it a rope. All of those visually impaired people are touching the same reality, but they are understanding it differently. And people have used this old parable to share their view or their viewpoint that no one religion is the one route to God, and to say that we should never think naively that we possess the definite, concrete, or exclusive religious facts or truths. I think there's a lot to agree with here. We do need to be open-minded. But being open-minded is not an end in itself. As G.K. Chesterton put it, merely having an open mind is nothing. The object of opening the mind, as of opening the mouth, is to shut it again on something solid. Being open-minded means it shouldn't mean being open-minded means that we can't discover or commit to a reality or truth when we find it. So the second thing I'd like us to think about is just how important humility is. I have met, like you and many of our listeners, I've met and heard and been personally offended by many arrogant, dogmatic religious people who are so convinced that they're right and everyone else is wrong. Jesus does tell his followers that they are to live with a love and a gentleness and a respect. And if that has been our experience, then I think all we can say is we're sorry. That's not actually what should have happened. Jesus teaches his followers not to go around shouting people down and being arrogant. And as important as humility is, though, and that apology is sincere, if you do go to the doctor with an infection, he says this infection can be treated with an antibiotic, but not with that vitamin tablet you've been taking. And if somebody responds to that and says, well, I don't think that's very humble, I don't think we would refuse to take the antibiotic. If it's true, then it's true. If somebody tells you a true idea in an arrogant way, then it can be really unappealing, but it might still be true. Another thing is happening here. The nature of truth is exclusive. The nature of water is wet. The antibiotic is the treatment to take. Now, other things might help, but the vitamin's either going to fix it or the antibiotic's going to fix it. Diamond is incredibly hard and tough. It's therefore not also wet and soft. And when something is true, it will exclude its opposite. And that's just part of what it means for something to be true. Reality doesn't lack humility for being as it is. So we also need to think slightly carefully about a little bit of a trick that's going on in the parable of the elephant and the visually impaired people. The parable teller actually has a unique vantage point as well as the elephant, it occurs to me too. They can see the entire elephant. They can see into all the beliefs of the different people feeling the elephant who represent the different religions of the world. And from that more expansive and insightful viewpoint, they're saying, I can see beyond you. I can see reality. I can see the elephant. I can see everything. But at the same time, the parable is giving us the message we all think we can see. Nobody should claim that they can see. If anyone claims that they can see an elephant, then you should not take them seriously. They don't really see. So there's a bit of a trick going on in the parable. Why then Christianity out of all the different religions? The only thing that matters really at this point, is it true? That's the only really key question here. Is it really true? We might have different reasons, or we might hear of different things that might make it unappealing for us to consider that, but it really does come down to, is it true? So finally, in a unique and special way, Jesus alone claimed that he was from God, and he backed that up with miracles, rising from the dead. He claims in John chapter 14 of John's Gospel, verse 16, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If all of the things that Jesus said and did happened, if all of those miracles, if all of those things around him happened, then I think any reasonable person has to sit back and say, my search for God could be over. I think I found him. If that stuff isn't real, isn't true, then we need to go back to the drawing board. But the truth is that that picture of Jesus that the New Testament presents is an accurate and a reliable picture. And that's how I think we can be humbly but carefully confident that he really is who he claimed to be.
And am I right in saying this, Tom, that Christ was the only person who claimed to be God? So if you take the example of Mohammed said that he was a prophet. He didn't ever claim that he was actually God. Is that right?
Well, so you're completely right that it wasn't a central claim of Islam to that Muhammad was himself the revelation of God. That would be to add a partner to God in Islam, which would be a great sin, because God doesn't have partners for Muslims. However, there are other people through history and within other religious movements who have claimed to be God. The question is, have they backed that up? Have they substantiated that in a persuasive way that has caused many, many people around them who are thoughtful, intelligent people to not only to change their minds, but also to change their lives? One of the things that's quite interesting that happens around Jesus and the time of his death on the cross, which is one of the most attested and secure historical facts that there is from history, that he actually died on the cross. John Dominic Crossan, a very skeptical scholar, says the fact that Jesus died on the cross cannot be doubted in our modern world. The transformation in many believers at that point, when they reported having resurrection appearances of Jesus, like, for example, Saul, who had been persecuting the early church, James, the brother of Jesus, the disciples who hadn't expected an individual bodily resurrection. This is the point that Tom Wright makes. And the transformation and explosive growth of the early church also suggests that Jesus was powerfully substantiating his claims to be God with these miracles, but also with his actual persuasive resurrection.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's always a blessing to hear from you. And if you've got any questions, we've said this, and it's really important that we point it out, that this is a safe place for you to ask your questions. You know, you'll never be judged, or we'll never think, well, call themselves a Christian and they're asking that. They say that they aren't a Christian and they're asking that. It's a safe place for us to ask the people who know, and for us just to battle through these things all together, because, you know, we don't need to do it alone. If you've got your doubts in your faith, as we found out a few weeks ago, it's completely normal. We're only human beings after all. But we believe that we've got the tools to help you on your journey. So if you've got any questions for future segments with Tom, then do let us know. The email address is studio@konnectradio.com.